She had this gift, twisting words, twisting minds. Every time I tried to speak up, she'd laugh and say, "You're crazy." And for a while, I believed her. But then things started getting strange. Messages deleted, doors left unlocked, whispers behind my back, until one day someone else saw it too, and everything began to fall apart. Want to know what she was really doing when no one was watching? You won't believe how deep this goes. This is the story of Dylan and Scarlett, and how one woman's manipulation nearly destroyed an entire community. What you're about to hear will make you question everything you think you know about psychological manipulation. Dylan Carter first met Scarlett Morgan at a coffee shop in downtown Portland. She was everything he thought he wanted: intelligent, charming, with this magnetic personality that drew people in like moths to a flame. Within 3 months, they were living together. Within 6 months, Dylan found himself completely isolated from his old life, but he didn't notice it happening. That's the thing about master manipulators. They work so slowly, so carefully, that you don't realize you're drowning until the water is over your head. Scarlett had this way of making suggestions that felt like your own ideas. "Don't you think your friend Blake drinks too much?" she'd say with concern. "I'm just worried about you being around that influence." Soon, Dylan stopped hanging out with Blake altogether. It started with small things. Dylan would swear he left his keys on the kitchen counter, but they'd be hanging by the door. He'd remember locking the apartment, but come home to find it unlocked. When he mentioned it to Scarlett, she'd laugh that musical laugh of hers. "Baby, you're losing your mind," she'd say, running her fingers through his hair. "Maybe you need to see someone about your memory." The gaslighting was so subtle, so consistent, that Dylan began to doubt his own perception of reality. He started writing things down, trying to keep track, but somehow his notes would disappear or be moved to different places. When he confronted Scarlett about the missing notes, she looked at him with genuine concern. "Dylan, honey, you never wrote any notes. Are you feeling okay? You've been acting really strange lately." Scarlett had this incredible ability to make everyone love her. She volunteered at the local animal shelter, organized neighborhood cleanups, and always remembered everyone's birthdays. To the outside world, she was perfect, the kind of woman other women wanted to be friends with, and other men wished they could date. But Dylan noticed something strange. While everyone adored Scarlett, they started treating him differently. Conversations would stop when he entered a room. People he'd known for years began giving him odd looks, like they knew something he didn't. "I think you're being paranoid," Scarlett would say when he brought it up. "Maybe you should talk to Dr. Mitchell about this. These delusions are getting worse." Dr. Mitchell was Scarlett's therapist recommendation, of course, a man who somehow always seemed to side with Scarlett's version of events. Dylan started noticing his digital life changing too. Messages from his phone would disappear. His social media posts would be deleted. Photos from his camera roll would vanish without explanation. He set up a hidden camera in their bedroom, thinking maybe he was sleepwalking or having some kind of episode. But when he checked the footage, it was gone. The memory card was completely wiped. "You never set up any camera," Scarlett said when he accused her. "Dylan, these paranoid episodes are getting scary. I found you talking to yourself in the kitchen yesterday, arguing with someone who wasn't there." The worst part? Dylan was starting to believe her. The constant questioning of his reality was wearing him down, making him doubt everything he thought. He knew about himself. Mrs. Grace Patterson lived in the apartment next door. She was a retired teacher in her 70s, the kind of woman who noticed everything but minded her own business, until she started noticing the pattern. She'd see Dylan leave for work every morning at 8 a.m. sharp. But she also noticed Scarlett, leaving the apartment 20 minutes later, always with a different man. Sometimes it was the mailman. Sometimes it was men Grace had never seen before. Grace started keeping a log, writing down times and descriptions. She wasn't sure why, but something felt wrong about the whole situation. The way Scarlett would come back home just before Dylan returned from work. The way she'd always have some story about running errands or visiting friends. But Grace kept her observations to herself. After all, maybe she was just a nosy old woman, seeing things that weren't there. Things escalated when Dylan started finding things in his apartment that he knew he'd never bought. Women's jewelry that wasn't Scarlett's, Receipts for expensive dinners at restaurants he'd never been to, credit card statements showing purchases he'd never made. When he confronted Scarlett, she broke down in tears. "Dylan, you bought me this necklace last week. You took me to that restaurant for our anniversary. How can you not remember?" She showed him photos on her phone, pictures of them together at the restaurant, Dylan smiling and holding up a glass of wine. But Dylan had no memory of any of it. The photos looked real, but something felt off about them. "I think you're having some kind of mental breakdown," Scarlett said through her tears. "Maybe we should go to the hospital. This memory loss is getting dangerous." Dylan's performance at work started declining rapidly. Important emails would be deleted from his computer. Project files would go missing. His co-workers began whispering about his increasingly erratic behavior. His boss, Amanda Foster, called him into her office. "Dylan, I'm concerned about you. Rachel from HR said you've been making inappropriate comments about female colleagues. Trevor mentioned you seemed confused during the client presentation last week." Dylan was stunned. He'd never made inappropriate comments, and he remembered the client presentation going perfectly well. But when he tried to defend himself, he sounded desperate, paranoid. "Maybe you should take some time off," Amanda suggested. "Get the help you need." That evening, Scarlett was waiting for him with a concerned expression. "Honey," Amanda called. "Me, she's worried about you. Maybe it's time we looked into getting you some professional help." The final straw came when Dylan's mother called, crying. "Dylan, how could you say those horrible things to me, after everything your father and I have done for you?" Dylan had no idea what she was talking about. Apparently, someone using his phone number had called his parents and unleashed a torrent of abuse, bringing up painful family secrets and saying unforgivable things. "Mom, I never called you. I would never say those things." "Dylan, it was your voice. Your father is so upset. He won't even talk to you." That night, Dylan confronted Scarlett directly. "I know you're doing this. I don't know how, but I know it's you." Scarlett's mask slipped for just a moment. A cold, calculating look flashed across her face before she rearranged her features into concern. "Dylan, you're scaring me. These accusations are getting out of control. I think we need to call someone." Mrs. Grace Patterson had seen enough. The morning after Dylan's confrontation with Scarlett, she watched through her peephole as Scarlett left with yet another man, this time someone Grace recognized as a local actor from the community theater. Something clicked. Grace had seen this man before, months ago, coming and going from the apartment. She remembered thinking he looked familiar but couldn't place him. Now she realized why. He looked remarkably similar to Dylan from a distance. Grace made a decision. She knocked on Dylan's door that evening when she knew Scarlett was out. "Dylan, dear, I need to talk to you. I've been watching and I know you're not crazy." For the first time in months, Dylan felt a glimmer of hope. Someone else had seen it. Someone else knew the truth. Grace showed him her log, dates, times, descriptions of the men coming and going. "She's been bringing men over while you're at work. Different men, but some of them, they look like you from behind." With Grace as his witness, Dylan began to investigate systematically. They set up a hidden camera in the hallway, one that Scarlett couldn't access or tamper with. Grace positioned herself as a lookout, documenting everything. What they discovered was chilling. Scarlett wasn't just cheating, she was running an elaborate con. The men coming over weren't random affairs. They were actors, voice artists, and tech experts she was paying to help her create fake evidence. One man looked enough like Dylan to pose for photos. Another had a similar voice and could mimic Dylan's speech patterns. A third was a computer expert who helped her doctor digital evidence and manipulate Dylan's devices remotely. "She's been planning this for months," Grace whispered as they watched the footage. "Maybe longer." Dylan realized the full scope of what Scarlett had been doing. She'd been systematically destroying his credibility, his relationships, his sanity, all while positioning herself as the concerned, loving girlfriend, trying to help her mentally ill boyfriend. As Dylan dug deeper, he discovered this wasn't Scarlett's first time. Through online searches and private investigator work, he found at least 3 other men in different cities who had similar stories. All had dated Scarlett under different names. All had experienced the same pattern of gaslighting, manipulation, and systematic destruction of their lives. One man, Connor Hayes, had even been committed to a psychiatric facility after Scarlett's manipulation drove him to what appeared to be a complete mental breakdown. Another, Nathan Brooks, had lost his job, his family, and ended up homeless, convinced he was losing his mind. She's a serial psychological abuser, Dylan realized. This is what she does. She finds successful men, moves in with them, and then systematically destroys them while positioning herself to inherit or benefit from their destruction. The pattern was always the same. Isolate the victim, gaslight them into questioning their reality, plant false evidence, turn their support system against them, and then swoop in as the caring partner trying to get them help. Dylan reached out to Connor and Nathan. Both men were initially suspicious. They'd been burned so badly by Scarlett that they trusted no one. But when Dylan shared his evidence and Grace corroborated his story, they began to believe. "She told everyone I was schizophrenic," Connor said over a video call. "By the time she was done with me, even I believed it. I spent 2 years in therapy trying to figure out what was wrong with me. Nathan was even worse off. I lost everything. My wife left me, took the kids. I couldn't hold down a job because she'd convinced everyone in my professional network that I was unstable. I lived in my car for 6 months. Together, they began building a case. Not just against Scarlett, but documenting her entire operation. They discovered she had a network of accomplices in different cities, a sophisticated system for creating false identities, and had been running variations of this scam for at least 7 years. With evidence mounting, Dylan and his allies set a trap. They knew Scarlett was planning to escalate. She'd been dropping hints about having Dylan involuntarily committed, claiming his episodes were getting dangerous. Dylan pretended to have a complete breakdown. He played into her narrative, acting confused and paranoid, giving her exactly what she wanted. Meanwhile, Grace and the others were recording everything. Scarlett took the bait completely. She called Dylan's workplace, his family, even the police, expressing concern about his mental state. She had fake evidence ready, doctored videos of Dylan talking to himself, fake journal entries describing violent thoughts, even fake medical records suggesting a history of mental illness. But what Scarlett didn't know was that Dylan was recording every conversation, documenting every lie. She was so confident in her manipulation that she became careless, revealing details about her, methods that she'd kept hidden before. "I think he might hurt himself," she told the police with perfect manufactured concern. "He's been talking about voices, about conspiracies. I found these disturbing writings in his room." The trap sprung during a meeting Scarlett had arranged with Dr. Mitchell, Dylan's family, and a crisis intervention specialist. She'd orchestrated it perfectly. Dylan was supposed to be confronted with his delusions and convinced to voluntarily commit himself for treatment. But instead of a broken man, Dylan walked in with Grace, a lawyer, and a private investigator. He had boxes of evidence, surveillance footage, financial records, testimony from other victims, documentation of Scarlett's false identities, and recordings of her admitting to the manipulation. "Before we discuss my mental health," Dylan said, calmly, "I think everyone should know who Scarlett Morgan really is." The room fell silent as Dylan laid out the evidence. Scarlett's face went through a range of emotions: confusion, denial, anger, and finally a cold calculation as she realized her game was up. "This is all part of his delusion," she tried one last time. "He's created this elaborate fantasy to explain his mental illness," but the evidence was overwhelming. Phone records showing her coordinating with accomplices, financial records showing payments to actors and tech experts, video footage of the fake Dylan entering and leaving the apartment, testimony from multiple victims across different states. Scarlett Morgan was arrested that day. As the investigation unfolded, authorities discovered the full scope of her operation. She'd stolen hundreds of thousands of dollars from her victims, destroyed dozens of lives, and had been planning to expand her operation nationally. Her real name wasn't even Scarlett Morgan. She was Rebecca Winters, a former psychology student, who'd been expelled from her program for unethical conduct. She'd studied psychological manipulation techniques and turned them into a criminal enterprise. Dylan's life slowly returned to normal, but the scars remained. Trust didn't come easily anymore. He'd learned how fragile our grip on reality can. Be how easily a skilled manipulator can make us doubt our own perceptions. Connor and Nathan began healing too. Connor was able to get his psychiatric diagnosis overturned and rebuild his relationship with his family. Nathan found steady work and started therapy to deal with the trauma. Grace Patterson became something of a local hero, the observant neighbor who saw through the facade and helped expose a dangerous predator. But the story doesn't end there. As word spread about Scarlett's methods, other victims came forward. Men and women from across the country who'd experienced similar systematic psychological abuse. The investigation eventually uncovered a network of people using these techniques, some working together, others copying methods they'd learned online. Dylan started a support group for victims of psychological manipulation. He learned that what happened to him wasn't unique. These predators are out there, and they're getting more sophisticated every day. The scariest part, Dylan reflects, isn't that she almost destroyed my life. It's how easy it was, how perfectly she played the system, how readily everyone believed her version of events. If Mrs. Patterson hadn't been watching, I might still be in a psychiatric facility somewhere, convinced I was crazy. The lesson isn't just about recognizing manipulation. It's about the importance of having people in your life who see clearly, who aren't afraid to speak up when something doesn't look right. Sometimes the person calling you crazy is the one who's actually driving you there. And sometimes all it takes is one person willing to witness the truth to bring down an entire house of lies. Trust your instincts, document everything. And remember, you're not crazy. Sometimes the world really is as twisted as it seems,